So, everybody, today we will continue the female reproductive system. You know that in female reproductive system, two important cycles take place. One is the ovarian cycle and another is the menstrual cycle. Those cycles are heavily controlled by the hormones. First, we will talk about the ovarian cycle. It occurs in the ovary. That's why it is called the ovarian cycle. Inside the ovary, you know already that in the cortex, outer part of the ovary, the follicles grow. So earliest follicles are called the primordial follicles. Okay. And then the follicles grow, get bigger, and also remember inside each follicle you have an ovum or egg. So primordial follicles become primary follicles, and then primary follicles grow further and become secondary, early secondary and late secondary. And inside the follicles you have the eggs or ovums. And then the most mature follicles are the Graafian follicles, like ripe fruit, right? Ready to rupture or break and release the seed. So this is the Graafian follicle. Inside the Graafian follicle, you have a large cavity filled with fluid. That's why it is so soft. Okay, and these are the follicular cells. So this part is called the follicular phase. Follicular phase of ovarian cycle, where the follicles grow and get matured. Make sense? So follicular phase, and the duration of this phase is about 14 days. 14 days. And then what happens? The follicle ruptures, right? And egg comes out from the ovary. And you also know that around the egg or oocyte or ovum there is a thick covering that is called zona pellucida. We have talked about that in last class. And some follicular cells. These cells are called corona radiata. Corona radiata. Okay. So this is the ovulation, release of the egg from the ovary, and ovulation, rupture of the Graafian follicle and release of the egg to the outside of the ovary. And this is the phase 2. This is phase 1. Phase 2 doesn't take day or days because it's just rupture and release, right? So it happens suddenly. And then after the rupture of the follicle, you know that the remaining part of the Graafian follicle that remains inside becomes corpus luteum. Corpus luteum. So the corpus luteum acts as what? As a corpus luteum acts as a temporary gland, and if fertilization does not occur, it will last for how many days? Anybody? 14 days. That I mentioned again and again in last lecture. Need to remember. So it will last for 14 days, and then eventually it will become a white colored structure that is called corpus albicans. Corpus albicans. Scar tissue, and it will eventually be destroyed in the ovary. So this part, last part, when the corpus luteum stays for 14 days, this is called the luteal phase. So phase number 3 is the luteal, very simple, luteal phase, because corpus luteum stays there for how long? 14 days. So luteal phase is the last part of the ovarian cycle, and it lasts for about 14 days. Make sense? So those are the 3 phases of ovarian cycle. Follicular phase 14 days, ovulation number 2, and number 3 luteal phase 14 days. So total ovarian cycle is about 28 days. So that is the ovarian cycle. Now I told you that these cycles are heavily controlled by or regulated by what? The hormones. Okay. From the pituitary gland, anterior pituitary, 2 hormones are released, those work on the ovary. One is follicle stimulating hormone, and another is called the luteinizing hormone, FSH and LH. These 2 hormones work on the ovary. FSH and LH both help in the growth of the follicles, stimulate the growth of the follicles. And LH, this one only causes the rupture of the follicle, that means ovulation. Rupture of the follicle is caused by sudden release of plenty of LH. So when plenty of LH is suddenly released, that is called LH surge. LH surge. That will cause the rupture of the Graafian follicle and ovulation. Okay. So many follicles start to grow at the same time. Okay. But finally, one follicle reaches at the Graafian follicle stage and will rupture. So that's why we get one egg or ovum released from the ovary at the end of the during the ovarian cycle, and that is helped by LH.
What happens to the other molecules that don't function?
They will stay there, and then when again the FSH LH will be released, another one will rupture.
They don't necessarily grow the 28 days. It might
No, let's
sit
stop
there.
before that. Stop before that. And you know that already, that the temporary gland, corpus luteum, releases what? Estrogen, progesterone, inhibin. You remember those 3 hormones? They tell the pituitary, don't release FSH, LH. don't rupture another follicle. Make sense? So that's why it will stay halt for another 14 days. Then we'll start again. Okay, and will get mature and rupture. Okay. So here, this is a nice picture. You see the hormonal regulation of the ovarian cycle. So I have already mentioned that from the anterior pituitary, FSH and LH, those two hormones are released and they stimulate the growth of the follicles. And you see in the right side, when the Graafian follicle is formed, the most mature one, sudden release of LH, plenty of luteinizing hormone, surge occurs that causes the rupture of the follicle and release of the egg. Okay, and then the remaining part of the Graafian follicle becomes the yellow structure temporary gland, that's the corpus luteum. Now you see the corpus luteum secretes progesterone, estrogen and inhibin, and those hormones inhibit not only the pituitary but also the hypothalamus, because we know that hypothalamus controls the pituitary, right? So inhibiting the hypothalamus, inhibiting the pituitary, and telling them don't release any more FSH LHs. Okay, LH. Now, if fertilization occurs, then corpus luteum stays for how long? I said 3 months, right? First part of pregnancy, and keep producing those 3 hormones and keep inhibiting the hypothalamus and pituitary. Make sense? So no ovulation will occur in first 3 months of pregnancy, but we know that ovulation will not occur during entire pregnancy, because after 3 months, who takes over? Placenta, and will start producing those 3 hormones, and they will keep the hypothalamus and pituitary inhibited. Okay, so that's the ovarian cycle. Now we will talk about the uterine cycle or menstrual cycle. You know that every time the ovary releases the ovum, during that time the uterus makes a nice soft bed, right? The endometrium of the uterus, and it hopes that the fertilized egg will arrive, right? You will go to your friend and bring him to your house, but most of the time fertilization does not occur and uterus destroys the bed, right? So making the soft bed and destroying it, those are the 2 main things that happen in uterine cycle or menstrual cycle: preparing the bed and destroying it. Again, the formation of bed and destruction of the bed, both are controlled by the hormones. As I mentioned, these cycles are controlled by the hormones. The uterine cycle lasts from 21 to 35 days, average 28. So you see, this duration is same as the duration of what? The ovarian cycle, right? So basically, they are connected to each other. They are connected to each other, linked to each other. Now, uterine cycle has 3 phases: menstrual phase, proliferative phase, and secretory phase. Now, you already know that innermost layer of the endometrium of the uterus is the endometrium, and you also know from last lecture that endometrium has 2 layers. One layer is fixed, remember that, fixed layer, and that is the stratum basalis or basal layer, and another layer which is not fixed, it changes. That is called what? Yeah, functional layer or stratum functionalis or functional layer. This layer changes, not fixed. Okay, so these are the two layers of the endometrium. You must remember I mentioned that in the endometrium you have straight and spiral arteries, right? And this part, when the layer is there, that part is called the secretory phase. Secretory phase. Why? Because in this part, lot of glands are present inside the functional layer, and these glands, uterine glands, secrete a lot of fluid. This fluid contains nutrition and keeps the bed soft and healthy. So uterine glands, plenty of uterine glands are there. They are secreting the fluid, and this is a thick, soft bed. This is the secretory phase. Then what happens? The constriction, strong constriction of the spiral arteries occur. So the arteries constrict. So this bed will not get blood, right? So no nutrition, no oxygen. Makes sense? So the bed will be destroyed. The tissue will die. You know, if it does not get oxygen and nutrition, no blood, that means the tissue will die, right? So that will cause the destruction of this bed. So the pieces will get out, and this is called this is phase 2, that is the menstruation. Destruction of the bed and excretion of the destroyed tissue. That's the menstruation or menstrual phase. Okay. So the bed is almost completely destroyed. Nothing is left. Almost nothing is left here. Then what happens? The bed starts to grow again, hoping that next time fertilization will occur, right? So the uterus will make the bed again, and this part is called the proliferative phase. The growth. Proliferation means growth, right? So proliferative phase. When proliferative phase. So after destruction, what happens? The bed is formed again. Make sense? So that's the proliferative phase. And then what will happen? Again, you see, after this, it will come again to this part, because it is a cycle happening one after another, right? So the glands will be formed, new glands. Glands will secrete the fluid, plenty of fluid, will make the bed soft, right? And ready for the fertilized egg to come and sit. So again, the secretory phase. If fertilization does not occur, then what will happen? It will be destroyed again. Okay, and again the bed will be formed. Okay, so those three things are happening continuously, right, until fertilization occurs. Now, in menstrual phase, what happens? The destroyed bed gets out from the body, and this destroyed bed contains what? Destroyed tissue, destroyed blood vessels. All these blood vessels are destroyed, destroyed glands. So all those things, blood comes out, all those things together get out from the body. Makes sense? Destroyed tissue, destroyed blood vessels, including blood, and destroyed glands. Everything uh, get out, gets out together. Okay. So just to read these slides. Menstruation is the process of endometrial slowing and or shedding. Lasts 1 to 7 days and sheds about 35 to 50 milliliter of fluid. And one thing, remember that total duration is 28 days. Average duration is 28 days. It is average. Secretory phase is the longest one. It's about 14 days. Let's see here. Here, you see the secretory phase is the phase that lasts for about 14 days. Menstrual phase 7 days and proliferative phase 7 days. So total 28 days. Okay. Now you see here the change of hormones in the blood during those phases. Just focus on two hormones, those are more important: estrogen, progesterone. These hormones also inhibin, that hormone inhibin is important. So those hormones regulate the menstrual cycle. You remember the ovarian cycle is regulated by FSH and LH, right, mainly, but menstrual cycle is regulated by these hormones. During the menstrual phase and proliferative phase, the concentration of estrogen is higher than progesterone. You see, progesterone is very low, the dark one, dark line, okay? So this is the menstrual phase and proliferative phase. During those two phases, the concentration of estrogen is much higher than progesterone, and it rises. And then it starts to fall, decrease. But the progesterone concentration starts to increase. So you see the estrogen is going down, but progesterone is going up during the secretory phase. Make sense? And in the middle of the secretory phase, you see the progesterone concentration is very high, right? And then again at the end of the secretory phase, the progesterone goes down. When the progesterone goes down here, drops the concentration, that causes strong constriction of the spiral arteries, and blood supply stops at the end of the secretory phase. So what will happen is destruction of the functional layer will occur. Okay, so the sudden decrease of the progesterone causes the constriction of the spiral arteries at the end of the secretory phase, and that stops the circulation and causes the destruction or the menstrual cycle, menstrual phase. Now, in the lower part of this picture, you see the change of body temperature. Also, during the menstrual cycle, the body temperature changes. During the secretory phase, the core body temperature increases slightly. Okay, so you see here during the secretory phase, the temperature has gone up. Okay, now those are the two cycles in the female reproductive system. One occurs in the ovary, another in the uterus. One is mostly controlled by the FSH and LH, and other is estrogen, progesterone inhibitor. Now, what I'll talk about is the fertilization. This is the uterus and the fallopian or uterine tube, and you know that the ampulla and infundibulum and the fibria. So this is the ampulla of the uterine tube, and here is the ovary. You know that the rupture of the Graafian follicle releases the ovum or egg, and that usually enters into the uterine tube or fallopian tube, and through the uh, vagina the sperm enters and travels a long way. Sperm has to travel a long way. That's why it has a tail, right? It will get out from the male reproductive system, you know, it is a long way, then will enter into the female reproductive system and will travel a lot. And ovum is lazy, doesn't like to work too much, move too much. It will just go from here to here in the ampulla. And this is the sperm that has traveled a lot. And the sperm fertilizes the egg or ovum in the ampulla of the fallopian tube. So fertilization usually occurs in the ampulla of the fallopian tube. And you know that ovum has 23 chromosomes and sperm has 23 chromosomes, right? When they join together, the fertilized egg has how many? 46 chromosomes. Okay, so that is the first cell of new life, offspring. The first cell of the new life is the fertilized egg, and that is called the zygote. So zygote is the first cell of the new life, which is the fertilized egg. And then what happens? The fertilized egg starts to multiply. First, one fertilized egg, zygote, will divide into 2, then from 2 to 4, 4 to 8, right? You know that how mitosis occurs. And mitosis occurs in all the cells, right? Except the sex cells. So here the body will grow by what? Mitosis. Only mitosis. So 1 cell to 2 cell, 2 cell to 4 cell, right? So that's how the number will increase. And 2 cell stage and 4 cell stage, these are called blastomere. Blastomere. 2 cell, 4 cell stages. So this is what? One cell, first cell. Then it will divide, and these are the blastomere. Then at one point you will get a small ball, solid ball of cells. That is called morula. Morula. A solid ball, like mulberry, solid ball of cells. 24 to 36, something like that, cells. So it is a solid ball of cells, morula. Then what happens? A cavity appears in that solid ball. So you see a cavity there filled with fluid. When the cavity appears inside that solid ball, it is no more solid ball, right? There is a cavity inside it, and this phase or state is called, or stage is called blastocyst. Blastocyst. So it is no more a solid ball. And then the blastocyst enters into the uterus. And when the fertilized egg is traveling, the uterus makes what? A soft bed. You know that already. We have talked about that a lot. Soft bed. Like, soil, you have added water, fluid, nutrition, everything. That is the endometrium. So the blastocyst will arrive here and will stick to the endometrium, and that is called implantation. Implantation. Okay, the blastocyst gets stick to the endometrium, functional layer of the endometrium. That is called what? Implantation. Like you are putting the seed in the bed, garden. Okay, and then the blastocyst will become embryo, and embryo becomes fetus here. Okay, so that's how the fertilization occurs and implantation takes place. Now, one thing here, the early few cell divisions, mitosis, are called cleavage. So cleavage, cleavage means separate. So early first few cell divisions are called cleavage. Just know that. So first cleavage occurs to form blastomeres. So that's how the fertilization occurs. Now I have mentioned probably before, if the ovum or egg doesn't enter into the fallopian tube, sperm can still get out and can fertilize it anywhere in your peritoneal cavity. And first few cell divisions can occur, and that is the ectopic pregnancy. Another thing can happen after fertilization. This fertilized egg can stick to the wall of the uterine tube, may not get detached. So the cell division will continue here, and that is also ectopic pregnancy. The true pregnancy is the implantation in the endometrium of the uterus. Makes sense? If it happens outside, we will consider that as ectopic pregnancy, and that embryo will not survive, because you know that this bed has a lot of nutrition, right, to keep the tissue alive. But outside you don't have. But why? First, several cell divisions will occur in ectopic pregnancy. You know that egg is much bigger than the sperm. You have seen the egg of chicken. That is just an ovum, right? Chicken egg is a single cell. Oh, how big, right? So the eggs are much bigger than the sperm. And why is that? Egg stores huge amount of nutrition inside it. That's why we eat egg, right? To get nutrition. So we know that egg stores or ovum stores huge amount of nutrition. You know that yellow part, fat, high energy, right? Why? Because we know that to multiply the cells, we need a lot of energy and nutrition, both protein and nutrition, energy, right? So that's why eggs are storing, a lot of nutrition and energy. That's why when fertilization occurs, after that, egg can supply nutrition and energy for several multiplication. Make sense? But eventually, it is not enough to continue to supply nutrition. So that's why eventually the T embryo will die if it happens outside. It takes about 7 days after fertilization. It takes about 7 days for the fertilized egg to arrive in the uterus. And after the blastocyst arrives here, it takes another 3 days, about another 3 days to get attached to the endometrium. So total from fertilization, the day of fertilization, if we consider this as day 0, it takes about 10 days to get implanted in the endometrium. 7 days to arrive inside the uterus and another about 3 days to get implanted. Okay. Now, sometimes you know that 2 embryos are formed or more than that. So, what causes the twins, 2 embryo? One is called monozygotic twin. Another is called dizygotic twin. Monozygotic. So how many zygotes? One. Mono, single, right? Di, 2. So to form one zygote, you need one egg. To form dizygote, you need 2, right? So if the ovary releases 2 eggs, 2 sperm are many, right? Sperm are millions. So both will be fertilized. So 2 separate zygotes will be formed. Make sense? So from 2 separate zygotes, ovums, 2 embryos will be formed. So they are not identical. Genetically, they are not identical because they are coming from 2 separate eggs, 2 separate sperm. Make sense? So they are not exactly identical. So that is dizygotic, which is not genetically identical. But monozygotic twin, how that happens? The fertilized egg one ovum, one egg. This is the fertilized egg, and it divides from blastocyst, you know that, and then morula. During that time, if somehow they get separated, so from two separate tissue masses, you get two babies, two embryos. So basically, it is coming from a single ovum, single sperm. Make sense? During the cell division, two cell masses can be formed.
How does the doctor know? Do they know ahead of time if it's one egg that has divided? If they're going to be fraternal twins or if they're going to be identical twins? Does the doctor know that?
I don't think
Until they come out?
I don't think it's easy to that early. It can tell. The possibility you can do the yeah.
So
I
if
don't
you
know.
can see it
Probably
on
it's
the
difficult.
ultrasound.
Yeah, have to check.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But they still
Once
be
the embryo is
identical.
formed, then you can tell, right? Embryo is formed, or even before.
Right.
You can see this one, right? You can see if they got separated, like in very early stage, even before the embryo is formed. You can see that the cleavage. But yeah, I don't know if blood test can do that. Probably.
Yeah.
You can test the chromosomes like XX or XY from any cell. You can do that. So yeah.
When does the splitting of the monozygote happen? Is it any time?
It usually happens before morula is formed. So two separate cell groups, then they multiply. Because that must happen in very early stage when the cells are still pluripotent. That means they can form all the organs. Very early stage of stem cells, they can go to any directions, right? Once the characterization of cells occurs, then it's not possible that one type of cell will produce another type of cell. Okay? It must happen in very early stage.
If you have conjoined twins,
Right, not completely separated, but some separation is there, right? So, but they're not completely split or separated here. Okay, so monozygotic is genetically identical, dizygotic is non-identical. Okay? So that's the twin. Anything else? Uh, Let me just mention one more thing. So this is the endometrium. This is the blastocyst. Blastocyst has a cavity and cell mass. So this is the cell mass called the inner cell mass, and this part has fluid cavity filled with fluid. That's the blastocyst, and whole thing is the blastocyst, right? Blastocyst. So blastocyst has inner cell mass and blastocyst, the cavity inside. Make sense? Inner cell mass is very important. Why? This part becomes embryo. Inner cell mass forms the embryo. First, the inner cell mass will form three layers. How many layers? Three. So, inner cell mass forms three layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. These three layers are called the germ layers. All these three layers have stem cells. Okay, and your body structures come from those three layers. From the ectoderm, we get the skin, the outer covering, outer structures of the body in general. Mesoderm, mostly muscles, and endoderm, the inner lining. For example, inner lining of your respiratory tract, inner lining of the GI tract, right? Inner lining of the blood vessels, heart, the chambers, partitions in the heart. So those come from endoderm. So just know that those three germ layers or germinal layers are formed from the inner cell mass, and then eventually different body parts come from those three layers. Okay. A hormone is released from here. After the implantation, what happens? This is very interesting. After implantation, when you put the seed in the soil, what happens? From the seed, roots come out, right? And go deep in the soil. So same thing happens after implantation of blastocyst. This is the endometrium, right? Root-like structures arise like this. These are called villi, chorionic villi. That's interesting, like exactly like seed. After you put it, the roots come out, and that is sprouting occurs, and those structures are called what? Finger-like structures, villi, chorionic villi. And from the chorionic villi, hormone is secreted that is called human chorionic gonadotropin. Human chorionic gonadotropin or gonadotropin hormone. This hormone confirms, when you do the pregnancy test, you see this hormone if it is present in the blood or urine, right? So if it is present, that confirms that implantation has occurred, right? So pregnancy has occurred or started. And here, eventually, that placenta is formed that takes over the function of the corpus luteum. So placenta is formed here. Here is the embryo. Here is the mother's endometrium, right? Mother's uterus. So this is the embryo. This is the uterus. So mother's blood vessels. These are the mother's blood vessels. Release blood here. Mother's blood is here, right? And this is what? Placenta, right? And through the placenta, mother's blood enters into the fetus body. Umbilical artery that connects, that. So blood goes to the fetus from the mother's blood. So placenta is a very important structure that not only works as a temporary gland, right, to replace the corpus luteum, but through the placenta, nutrition, oxygen, right, those things, important materials are exchanged through the placenta. And when the birth occurs, the placenta comes out with the infant, right, with the fetus. So that is a temporary structure in the body, female body. Okay, so let's stop here. I think that's all you need to know.